Can you actually milk a dead cow? I suppose immediately after its death you could, but it would not be ethical to do so. My take on reboots will not be just an opinion I got from ethereal vibes and intuition. No, I wanted to know where the truth is. And I found it. You are about to see it demonstrated with numbers whether there actually are more reboots than ever, or if it is just conservative vibes. Then I will tell you what the marketing and research says about reboots, copies, and how people actually process visual creative works, and how I think it all reflects on our current reality. The notion that creativity has died and nothing good is being produced anymore goes back decades, and people used to say it about the 90s as well. We're like dogs in that regard, except we skew towards negativity, whereas dogs actually seem to enjoy life. Okay, I will tell you, there actually are way more reboots now. How do I know that? To find that out, I did my own research. Now hang on, bear with me, actual research. But I have to disclose, for the data gathering, I used ChatGPT, but I do think that it is permissible in this research. See, I gathered lists of 100 movies for each decade, spanning from the 60s all the way to the 2010s. The area of production specified was the English-speaking part of the world, so the United States, Canada, Australia, Ireland, you get it. 100 movies for each decade. That was 600 movies produced in total. The device began the lists with known movies, and if it could not find any more and was repeating itself, it just filled the lists with lesser-known movies to get 100 unique ones produced each decade. Next, I asked whether each movie in question ever got a reboot or remake since it has been produced. The decade was then summarized with a percentage of how many of these ended up getting reboots or remakes in total. 7% from the movies from the 60s eventually got a reboot or a remake. That number rose to 18% a decade later. In the 80s, it was 27% of movies that eventually got a reboot or a remake. In the 90s, that number rose to 32%. So nearly every third movie got a reboot or a remake. Movies from the O's, that was 29%, and from the 2010s, 21%. And when I took the entire 60 years worth of movies and then used the reboots or remakes as a whole another set, I then asked what the distribution of the reboots or remakes was across the decades, meaning I was counting the years that the reboots actually got produced in. The results are not surprising, but at the same time, yes, because they give us actual tangible data. In the 60s, 0% of reboots or remakes were made. In the 70s, same, 0%. Reboots and remakes obviously start with the 80s with 8%. That number rose slightly to 12% with the 1990s. 20% of the entire set of 60 years worth of reboots and remakes got produced in the 2000s. In the 2010s, 28% of the 60 years worth of reboots and remakes, and 32%, so 1 in every 3 reboots or remakes were made in the 2020s. Just to remind everyone, the year is 2025. We still have 5 years to go. And I know that 100 movies per decade is not every movie or every TV show ever produced, but I think that if we were ever to get a sense of whether there are actually more copies of copies of copies being made now, it would be with general explorations like this one. So we can see that the increase is insane. And what I think may explain why so many people think there is just a reboot after reboot constantly being made, the most rebooted decade apparently seems to be the 90s. So particularly the 90s kids who grew up on 90s art are more likely to notice it, together with everyone who ever aspired to be a 90s kid. There, everything is getting rebooted. But it isn't the end of creativity, it's the end of old creativity and the monopoly of big corporations. When there is a crisis, big fish eat small fish, and behold, suddenly nobody gets to compete in that industry. Contrast that with creative industries. In the 1950s, a random person or a tiny group of people could hardly decide one day to use their free time for the production of a movie. When people ask if creativity is dying, I have to wonder, where exactly is it supposed to be dying? And this question can be dismissed because new things exist, therefore you're wrong. But guess what? That could technically be true as well. Looks like a strong prerequisite of creativity in people in general is financial security. And yeah, that's been true for fewer and fewer people over the years. Now we can look at what happened in the also creative corporations that eventually led to where we are now. There has been extensive research through Hollywood across thousands of movies, and familiar emotional arcs, I guess because we are cowards when it comes to novelty, predict revenue. They know. Oh, they know. There are test screenings, focus groups, and now more advanced approaches to testing the audience. Producers operate under the unfortunately correct assumption that established fan base plus lore plus something new equals profit. And since most new things fail, sequels and films that are already established brands are more likely to survive. But they can only do so much. Not all reboots and remakes make it. People judge blatant feature imitation as unfair and unacceptable. However, when creators imitate the vibes, then that is found acceptable by the consumer, which results in brands sometimes imitating on purpose and using it as guidance on how to market the thing. If someone actually does something substantive with the piece, it may work, but just rehashing the idea with new cast and effects is offensive to people. And the creators could know that, since research supports that this is the case with people, yet they often do it anyway. Why? Well, because us humans have a tendency to say we want one thing and actually do another. Even when we try to convince everyone else and each other that we want one thing, it is ultimately the real consumer choices that direct where money is spent in the future. That means that while people profess outrage when a new reboot is released, the corporations are right to disregard it because it often does not reflect the true sentiments. But obviously it's not always true that outrage secretly signals the project will be good. You gotta live in reality to be able to tell the difference. They just got their neat little studies and have to stick to them no matter what. At that point, the research no longer serves as guidance, but almost as if it was describing fundamental forces of the universe. But again, that's just how corporations function. And if and when it happens, it's delicious to watch something terrible fail. However, here is how they operate. There are revealed preferences of people and stated preferences. The discrepancy has been studied in literature, especially in the area of ethical consumption, where it was found, surprisingly, that people who profess ethical values rarely follow through on them. This gap appears to close when people are actually monetarily incentivized to answer truthfully. I was not able to find any research on stated versus revealed preferences in regards to reboots. However, on performative social media, it is reasonable to assume that those are stated preferences, and revealed preferences show that people prefer familiar emotional arcs and generally a moderate level of familiarity. And reboots offer a nice compromise between creativity and profit. They just make sense. With the oversaturation of all kinds of entertainment all at once everywhere, combined with people having less disposable income to give to entertainment, the pressure to be the one who gets the money is bigger than ever. But surely marketing cannot influence everything, right? Can good marketing carry a bad product? This was quantified in a study from 2006 about how different aspects of marketing predict revenue. Short answer is yes and no. Good marketing can offset what the movie lacks in quality, but it is a disproportionate investment into more advertising if you wanted to just slightly increase the revenue. A good product, on the other hand, can obviously make more in revenue without as much advertising. At some point, you have to start wondering if it's not just easier to make a good movie. The actions of a studio, meaning promotion and ensuring distribution, before the film's release only affect the opening weekend of the movie. But quality was the best predictor of long-term success. Wow, no way! If studio actions do not manage to bring people into the theaters in the beginning, they will not have any effect after that. In addition to marketing, we are being influenced in a manner that we can only attempt to visualize and feel the effects of. And that is, the available set of choices we are presented with has been curated. And in many industries, you cannot really influence the contents of this set of choices by opting out. So even if we thought that if we stood together like we had a hive mind, that voice would be equal in strength to the supply side, not really, not everywhere anyway. Even if only by not wanting to feel left out, if you ever feel like you are making a choice due to external circumstances, you are not doing it in a completely free setting. Why does it feel like times were better back then? It could be that more new things were produced in the past because a few decades ago, the feedback from the audience was slower. If something was a success, the studio did not immediately know how big a success it was or why it had succeeded. Now they get to have near instant performance measurements. With the potential certainty of at least some profit, it seems only natural to default to it. But movies were better in the past. They were, but that's not the point. Hey, if everything sucks, then I can pick what I prefer, right? And what has tangibly changed is that basically since 2008, we haven't really recovered from the Great Recession, which in many aspects was bigger than the Great Depression. We haven't ever been living for so long on borrowed time. And yes, I do think it is impacting us on a societal level where the general sentiments gradually deteriorate no matter what. As if we knew. Everyone has been trying to milk this dead cow of an economy for over 15 years now and to do it better, faster, now. do it all before the cow actually breaks. Reboots are the least of our problems.